All right, hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Digital Safety Planning for Survivors workshop. We can just go ahead and get started. It's 1 o'clock. So I'm with the Parasol Cooperative. My name is Sandy Scalani, and just a quick little bit about who we are before we get started on this webinar. We are a nonprofit tech company that we build tech solutions to protect people from abuse. And some of the products and services that we offer. First, we do research and education. So we have trainings, presentations, thought leadership around the intersection of emerging technology and abuse. We also have a survivor-centered client relationship manager that we've recently launched for advocates, and it has discrete client portal and convenient scheduling app. And today we're going to be demonstrating our generative AI assistant that can help protect people from abuse and create digital safety plans. We are a tech company that's also a nonprofit. We've been around since 2020. We were created by survivors, technologists, advocates. So I like to say that we're kind of in the nice middle ground between, we're a tech company, but we also understand the people that we're building this technology for, because we've been there and we've used we've been on the ground, we've had a need for using this technology, and then we're also advocates and survivors ourselves. So we have that human-centered aspect to what we're doing. So that said, the objectives of today's webinar is, first of all, we're going to give you an idea of some of the digital safety vulnerabilities that are present right now for survivors of human trafficking, domestic violence, interpersonal violence, and tech-facilitated abuse. We're also going to show you some tools to help survivors navigate the digital safety planning world. And we're going to demonstrate our generative AI product that's going to be able to help you build digital safety plans as well. So what is safety planning in general? If you are working in this field of victim services, working with domestic violence survivors or human trafficking survivors, then you probably understand already that safety planning in general for physical safety is an evidence-based best practice. So this helps us to individualize risk assessments, do safety housing options, create emergency contact lists, help document abuse, plan for legal protections and safety during high-risk periods. So before we proceed, I would like you to take 1 second and take this poll so we can get a sense of where you're at as far as safety planning just in general. Physical safety planning. Okay, that's almost all of you, and As you can see, we have a range of answers as far as like how much you do physical safety planning, and then how often those safety plans are including digital safety. So why do advocates need to understand what tech-facilitated abuse is, how to, look for it, and how to address it? So research actually has been done. There's on that has shown that there's actually a lack of evidence-informed response frameworks for agencies and professionals in the field on digital safety planning and tech-facilitated abuse. And victim services professionals often lack the knowledge and confidence on how to address tech-facilitated abuse. In addition, there were studies that showed that even when survivors would come forward with disclosing or suspicions of being abused using technology or stalked or harassed, sometimes advocates that didn't understand the landscape would give maybe inappropriate advice or tell victims that they were that their devices maybe were malfunctioning or they just didn't know how to use them. And so in addition, the National Network to End Domestic Violence did a study in 2021 assessing providers' confidence in their ability to recognize and address tech abuse cases. So this study was done with 989 advocates and 162 legal professionals. Around half of the respondents were only somewhat confident in their ability to recognize tech abuse or explain basic tech safety strategies and planning, but an overwhelming majority lacked strong confidence in being able to find out what kind of tech is being misused or finding accurate information on how technology works. And 45% of advocates were only somewhat or very confident in minimizing tech abuse. So we have a need for continual learning on this. And the field of the emerging technology in general is continuing to, advance as well. So you can never learn enough. So let's discuss a little bit about what this tech-facilitated abuse actually looks like. When it comes to domestic violence, human trafficking, there's a lot of overlap, mostly because we're using the same kinds of technology and abusers are seeking to, control, harass, manipulate, stalk people, and cause harm and distress to them across the board. So the NNEDV also found in about 97% of domestic violence programs reported that abusers are using technology to stalk, harass, and control victims. So it's pretty ubiquitous, and we can't get away from tech now. We can't live in a world without our apps, our phones, our computers. So it's important to understand how people are actually being harmed potentially, or where the compromises and vulnerabilities can be. So for one, surveillance and monitoring. So that's one way that can be done through stalkerware or spyware, which are secretly installed apps, software, devices that might monitor your location or messages or your online activity. Social media surveillance is pretty common. This is tracking posts, your comments, your interactions online, or interacting with your friends and followers online. And then there's location tracking through GPS or things like air tags, where you can actually use these GPS-enabled devices to be able to follow victims' movements around. Another way that that we're using technology to abuse people is through identity exposure and control. So doxing is basically the word for publicly sharing someone's personal details in order to intimidate and control them. So, maybe their address, their phone number, any kind of personal information, and sharing it in public forums. The other way that this is done is through account hacking. So this is basically gaining unauthorized access to your accounts. So that can be email, social media, financial accounts, things like that. Another common way that people are abused through technology is through the harassment and manipulation. So online harassment, this is, things like relentless messaging, threats, creating fake accounts to monitor or manipulate victims. Cyber stalking is as well, and also non-consensual image sharing and revenge porn. So these are kind of threats or acts of distributing intimate images without someone's consent or control, or to retaliate against a breakup or things like that. These non-consensual images can be actual images that are shared, but they're also increasingly using deep fake images as well to humiliate and shame people. In addition to that, there's also IoT gaslighting, which is interesting. This is basically the Internet of Things. So your devices at home, I will not say her name because she'll wake up, but you can, or things like turning on the lights, turning off the lights remotely, locking and unlocking doors remotely, and things like that. So if somebody has access to those devices in your home, they can create those situations where they're manipulating them when you're not around or when you're there. In addition, we've seen technology being used to exploit and recruit people especially for trafficking situations or other. So sextortion is becoming more popular. This is the threat. It's like basically blackmailing victims to release real or deep fake explicit images unless they send you money or give you sexual favors or kind of comply with their instructions. Fake job offers and romance schemes are ways that are popular for being able to lure somebody into being trafficked to begin with. And the advertising and facilitation of human trafficking takes place on social media, online platforms, dating sites. This is a way that we advertise trafficking victims and sell sexual abuse material and facilitate exploitation. In addition, abusers are using technology to have financial control over people. And so that means that you can have financial abuse through the online platforms and apps. So abusers gain control of financial accounts like your bank accounts or your crypto accounts and apps, and then they use them to limit your independence and security, take all your money out, things like that. In addition, we're seeing identity theft and credit card fraud. Also, abusers will open up credit cards in survivors' names, max them out, basically destroy their credit and things like that. Okay. And finally, we have the emerging technologies categories. So deep fake technology is basically AI generated images that are used to blackmail, manipulate, or humiliate victims. So there's apps that exist for that, like Nudify apps and things where you can create, just paste somebody's face onto nude bodies. And then you can use that because that creates shame and humiliation, even if it's not somebody's actual body that's on there. And then dark web marketplaces are, used to, basically an anonymous underground marketplace that's used to exchange abuse material or other illegal goods and services. So there are likely more tech facilitated abuse scenarios that exist. Those are some of the common ones. There's more that are constantly popping up. So what are the benefits of digital safety planning? So if we're looking at these are all the possible kind of scenarios or vulnerabilities that somebody can have to be abused through technology, through online apps and things like that. So the benefits of creating a digital safety plan, of course, are going to be to mitigate the tech-based risks, to preserve evidence for legal proceedings, reduce isolation and improve access to support, enhance the overall safety and well-being of the survivors that you're working with, and empower survivors with the digital literacy so that they can also continue to keep themselves safe even after you've mitigated some of these issues. So when would you create a safe digital safety plan? So pretty much any time that you would create a regular safety plan, upon intake or assessment in your organization, you're going to want to check in about the digital safety as well. If you are suspecting that there might be digital abuse, or if the survivor that you're working with suspects or discloses that there's digital abuse, then you should be thinking about digital safety planning. During regular safety planning sessions, when somebody's preparing to leave the abuser, or if the situation with the abuser has escalated, the violence has escalated, or something has changed, then you might want to create a digital safety plan at that time. If there are during legal proceedings, when you're assisting with shelter or relocation, when you're supporting children's safety, it's also important to understand that some of the apps and technologies that we use for children are apps that are like surveillance and monitoring type of apps that can also be used against, for example, the other parent. So if you are co-parenting a child and you have some of these monitoring like Life 360 and things like that on their phone, then the possibly abusive partner is going to be able to see not just where the kid is, but most likely where the other parent is as well, because they'll be together and things like that. Okay. And like the chats that the text messages back and forth and things like that. So that's just something to consider when you're supporting children's safety as well. And then during the follow-up and ongoing support, it's important to have the safety planning, because it is a dynamic ecosystem. It's a dynamic process. It's always changing. New threats can pop up. There's hundreds and hundreds of apps that we're accessing and using. So it should be part of an ongoing process. So here's some considerations before you begin. First of all, digital safety planning might seem like a lot. There are many, many steps potentially to include, many apps to look at. But most importantly, don't be overwhelmed. You have the skills already. If you're an advocate in this field working with survivors, most importantly, you have to stay human-centered and trauma-informed, okay? The priorities are crisis response, physical safety, de-escalation, grounding, helping people ground, providing that ongoing support. And we want to avoid overreaction. And what that means is that, we believe and investigate. So we're not going to kind of throw off if somebody has a concern, or maybe they believe that they're being stalked or something like that. We want to not just kind of dismiss that, but we want to believe it, but we also need to investigate, because it's not always the case that what somebody is perceiving is going to be what's actually happening. And so a lot of times the experience of trauma might create some discrepancies in what's, your reality of what you're understanding the reality to be. Or there might be, for example, coincidences that are happening, like you've clicked on a phishing email and you ended up downloading a virus by accident. Might not have anything to do with your abuser, but might be compromising your devices. So it's important to believe, but then kind of dig deeper and understand that, not everything is possible or probable. So if it seems like it's, really out there or kind of conspiracy, then maybe we need to like think about what it could be. For example, the RFID chips, there are kind of theories out there that people have been implanted with RFID chips, which you need to scan, as part of being able to track products that you're selling in a marketplace as it's going through the supply chain. It's pretty unlikely that that's going to be something that's used on a person. But there have been people who have believed that that was what happened. But it could be something else. So that said, we need to be systematic about how we're assessing what the threats actually are. Okay, so it's important to kind of assess, map out kind of like all the vulnerabilities, all the devices, things like that, and then prioritize which ones you're going to deal with first, because there might be multiple steps that take time to get through. Okay. The other piece of this is that you have to understand the risk of action. So if you are, cutting off somebody that's the abuser's access to know where you are, to stalk you and things like that, then that might lead to a retaliatory action. And so it's important to be able to assess whether that is actually a threat, and then be able to create physical safety planning around that and be able to address the digital safety in a safe manner. Okay. And the other thing is that we have AI tools that can assist, which is what I'm about to show you. And they can provide resources, but they definitely don't replace people. They don't replace advocates. You're going to need to provide ongoing support, help survivors understand that, hey, maybe abusers understand where you're located because you have a mutual friend on social media that keeps reporting back, right? That's a human threat. That's not necessarily a digital threat. And so really trying to help, be that trauma-informed kind of helper for people that are going through this, and using the AI to help, but not replace your role in this. Some of the information that you're going to want to gather even before you start creating the safety plan is, list out what the devices does the survivor have and who owns them, what might be the vulnerable or compromised accounts, what are your email accounts or cloud storage accounts, who has access to them, who has the passwords, all your apps that you're sharing, or the apps that the abuser might have access to, and then also if you have mutual friends on social media that you don't necessarily trust, or you feel like that they might be compromising your location, things like that. So you might want to make a list and figure out who those people are. And then if there's any joint online assets, crypto accounts, bank accounts, things like that, you're going to want to list those things out first. It makes the digital safety planning process a lot easier if you have that information ahead of time. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to Ruth. Ruth is your digital guardian. She's our AI assistant that we've created to be able to help with this process of creating digital safety plans. So why Ruth? So Ruth, most people are not equipped with the knowledge on all the digital vulnerabilities that exist. It's hard to keep up with emerging technology. And, Ruth is a very useful tool for being able to understand what these threats are and how to locate them in your devices, in your apps, and then how to mitigate them. Safety plans are really just one use case for Ruth. Ruth can also be used for answering any kinds of questions about abuse in general, domestic violence, interpersonal violence, human trafficking, any kind of tech facilitated abuse. Could give you resources globally. It can also be a helpful IT person. If you need help just kind of understanding how to do two-factor authentication or something like that, you can ask the questions. Ruth it's survivor built and centered. So what that means is that we prioritize survivor safety and support, and it doesn't collect user data. So we don't have an email to log in, and we don't train the model using the queries or the questions that you're asking the chatbot. Okay, so none of this stuff is going back. As soon as you close it out, it disappears. So that's meant to maintain your privacy and security. Ruth is also trauma informed. That means that she responds in a trauma informed manner and tone, and then also can direct users to local resources. And we complement human expertise. So the output is supposed to be used to supplement your existing knowledge and practices and protocols, not replace it. Okay. Understanding how to use these large language model AI chats is a part of this process of using Ruth. So if anybody's used things like ChatGPT, and I'm sure that most of us have at least given it a try, it's a little bit different than just kind of Googling in a search bar, a question. So understanding LLMs, we call them large language models, they are conversational. So it takes a little practice, but how you actually ask the questions, how you prompt it, then that determines how the output comes back to you. And then in addition to that, it's not always right, or it doesn't always output exactly the way you want it to, given how you've asked the question. It's okay that you can tell it that it's wrong. You can tell it that it's incomplete or too simple or too detailed, and it will actually correct its output. So it's meant to be used like a conversation. And then the limitations, of course, AI isn't perfect. It's learning. It's always learning. So we may encounter small errors or glitches here or there, and your feedback is important in this process. So if you go and experiment with Ruth later, there is a feedback link at the top of the page, and you can always let us know what your experience was. So we can have a continual growing and learning and improvement process. So if we are ready, I will share, I will demonstrate Ruth for us. So Ruth can be found on our website, which is parasolcooperative.org. And /Ruth. So when you go into the website, you're going to see the page looks like this, and you're going to click the Start Chatting. Ruth is very useful for language interpretation as well. So we speak over 85 languages. I am just going to do this in English. So it gives you a little message to start about closing the browser tab that led you here for safety. So you see at the top, you see our website, and then it opens a new tab for Ruth. So if you quick exit out of here, then it's going to close this tab immediately. So if somebody's looking over your shoulder, you can get out quickly, but the other tab will still be open. So if that's important, then you should close that as well. So I'm going to start by just using the case of I'm working with a client who's been trafficked. And I said, we need to create a digital safety plan. And then it says, are you in a safe location? Are you using a secure device? And I'm going to say yes. Now it guides you through some questions that's going to help develop a safety plan. So do they have a mobile phone? Is it a new device or one known to the trafficker who pays for it? Are there any apps or accounts on the phone that they might have access to? So yes, she has a phone. The trafficker bought it and pays for it. Yes, they share apps. So then it tells you about your device security, the risks that are that you're seeing. Okay, they might have full access to track the location, monitor calls, text messages, and things like that. And then it gives you some steps. So don't use this for sensitive communication. Turn off the phone completely. Now it's important to understand that once you start this process, it's going to be different. It's going to be customized for each case that you're asking it about, that you're prompting it for. Okay. So I'm going to say, let's move on to the next steps in the digital safety planning. You can also ask questions about anything that pops up at the time. But for the sake of our time and to get to Q&A at the end, I want to make sure that we are getting through this So let's focus on account security. Does your client have any email, social media, or other accounts that they might have access to? I'm just going to say yes. So now it's asking you to make that assessment. So make the list of email, social media, banking, and all of that we discussed earlier. Identify which ones are likely compromised. Security steps. Then it's prompting you to create new secure accounts. So some of the things to think about is, in the media, they like to show you how do you keep from being tracked, is to throw your phone out the window of a moving car or like break it, and that's not necessarily going to work if you keep logging in with your Apple ID everywhere, because that is how this tracking is actually being happened, right? So, so here it says, these changes should be made gradually to avoid alerting the trafficker. Now discuss online behavior. Does your client need guidance on safe internet usage or minimizing their digital trace? Yes. So you can see all of these steps here. I'm not going to read them out, but you'll see at the end. Would you like to discuss creating an emergency communication plan or explore local resources that can provide additional support? We need some resources in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, it's safe to proceed with local resource information for Atlanta. Then it'll pull up some of these phone numbers, resources, and things like that. No, I don't want to discuss how to safely contact them right now. No, but please create the digital safety plan. So what you see happening here is it's taking the information that you just gave it when it asked you these questions, and it's putting it in a table format where you have the topic on one side, the situation, what the risk actually is, how to mitigate the risk, and then actions to take. And so you can copy paste this into a Word document or whatever format you use. And if you need more detailed information about any of these, you can just continue to ask follow-up questions. Okay, so you'll see here the internet usage, location services, social media, and it gives you these steps. In addition, it has additional recommendations, and then it says, would you like to discuss how to safely implement this plan or address any specific concerns about the digital safety measures outline? I will say, not at this time. Or I will say, what one thing do you recommend we prioritize immediately before she leaves my office? So this gives you, you can ask it to prioritize, you can ask it to expand, and that's basically it. So where there's a lot of additional resources that are available as well when it comes to digital safety planning and tech facilitated abuse. The domestic violence field has really has a lot of really great resources, especially the domestic violence, the National Domestic Violence Hotline has a safety planning checklist on their website. And the National Network to End Domestic Violence has a toolkit around digital safety plans and digital safety. And the Cornell's Clinic to End Tech Abuse has assessment guides and different resources on and how to actually assess and whether you've your digital safety and things like that. In addition, our National Human Trafficking Hotline is full of resources, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So these are all great places to go for more information on digital safety. It is 2:01, so I want to be mindful that this is the end of our hour. I want to thank you all for joining us. We're definitely going to need more and more of this awareness and these tools to be able to help us combat this tech facilitated abuse landscape that we have. If you have any questions, you want to follow up with me, if you want to talk about partnerships or getting this on your website or whatever it is that you want, please, here's my email, sandyscalani@parasolcooperative.org. And you can go onto our website and try Ruth out for yourself anytime. Please give us feedback. That's how we make this better. And yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.